What happens when you align your God-given talents with your business vision? Bryson's journey reveals the extraordinary results. In this episode of Roofing Success, we dive deep with Bryson Berard of In the Light Roofing to uncover how he's built unstoppable momentum in his business. From navigating the challenges of scaling up operations to fostering a culture where team members and subcontractors excel, Bryson shares his journey of continuous improvement and leadership growth. Bryson isn't just the CEO of In the Light Roofing. He's a dynamic leader who's grown his company over 7 years into business with a clear vision for 2025 and beyond. And what sets Bryson apart is his relentless drive to build momentum through systems, culture, and servant leadership. Whether it's empowering his team with the right core values or ensuring even the smallest repair gets done with care, Bryson's approach is as strategic as it is inspiring. What makes this conversation truly unique is Bryson's focus on stewardship and efficiency, which stems from his passion for service and a vision to make a lasting impact on the roofing industry and beyond. In today's episode, you'll learn how to systematize your operations for scalability, develop a winning team culture, and master the art of balancing ambition with actionable strategies. Let's dive in with Bryson Berard from In the Light Roofing. Welcome to the Roofing Success Podcast. I'm Jim and I'm here to bring you insights from top leaders in the roofing industry to help you grow and scale your roofing business. Bryson Berard, In the Light Roofing. How are you, man?
Amazing. Doing well.
Awesome, man. The energy is always high with you. I love it. You have a passion for this.
Yep.
But in the beginning, so for people who don't know, this is your second time on the podcast. It's been about 2 years now. I think you were on I think it was like episode 135 or something like that. So for people that want to go back and listen and get to know you more and your journey more, go back to episode 135 and kind of listen to that. In the Light Roofing has grown over the years. You continue. What I love about what you're doing and is you have this mentality of continuous improvement, right? And I remember in our first conversation, you were talking about stuff you learned from Dimitri and stuff you learned from Martin Pettigrew and stuff you learned from Ryan Groth and stuff. Like you're just constantly consuming and iterating on your business. Mm-hmm. And so what I think I'd love to start with is how do you build momentum through the phases of your business, through the stages of your business as you're going through them? How is that for you? What are you thinking about in that regard?
Yeah, no, that's great. And hey, totally appreciate you having me on the podcast again. So I'm glad that I get to share a little bit more and hopefully it catches some people that are needing some of this information. Yeah. So one thing I could know, we're going on like 7.5 years in business, that the business hasn't always looked the same. It started off a certain way and is now moving in a certain direction that honestly I can't necessarily stop. There's been so much momentum over the years that we started off more as like a snowball, and now we're like really becoming like snowmen. I know that's kind of like a little cheesy thing. I just made it up. So I haven't really heard it before, but it's just kind of something that makes sense to me. When you first start your company, you're trying to figure out how do I sell a job? And then you're like, okay, how do I install a job? How do I get the dumpster there? So I have to order the dumpster and the material and the crew's going to show up all at one time. Like to some entrepreneurs or some people that are entering the roofing space, that's a lot. And you know what? People at high levels still struggle with that. But then it starts to get to the point where you're like, okay, now I did that like 1 day a week. And now I'm doing that 2 days a week. Now I'm doing that 3 days a week. Now I'm doing that 10 days a week. I'm doing that 10 days a week and I'm doing that for an entire quarter. And that's something that we experienced this year. So for just about a quarter of the year, it was so cool. We were running like just about like anywhere between like 10 jobs a week, for us starting out in the beginning, maybe you hear in the beginning of the podcast on episode 135, we weren't there. We were just trying to make it, how can we do a roof a day for 5 days a week? Now we're running 2 crews and we're doing it for an entire quarter, crushing it, killing it. And it's so cool, but like it takes disciplines, it takes really good habits to make sure that you can do those things on a frequent basis. But you got to have like the moral authority within yourself to communicate that to your team, to therefore like produce that on a regular basis. So yeah, I guess going back to the beginning of it all is that there's just little hurdles that consistently need to be achieved each and every day. And eventually you continue to do those. People know you, people recognize you. And then you come to a certain point in your business where like literally you could go on vacation for a week and things aren't going to fall apart.
Like, and 10 roofs get built.
And 10 roofs get built. And like I'm in Costa Rica, like with my wife, and obviously you come back. There's a couple little things like, but that's just being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Let's talk about that journey a little bit. Like there are so many things you have to figure out. I love that. Like there are so many things that you have to figure out in the beginning. Like you said, just even how to get the dump trailer to the, like, who picks it up, right? Who drops, who, like, right? Like there's all of these little details that we don't think about in those early stages, but that's what you're learning, all of those things. What were, like, talk about those early days and kind of the challenges that you overcome, or like I remember this one, that was one that, and we solved it this way.
Yeah. I think there was a point where we were trying to have the salesman be responsible for production as well. And I think when we overcame the fact of learning that sales should be designated to sales and production should be to production, I think that's when we like jumped levels. Now it took some time to really get that up and running and like, cause you're always juggling things. And it's like, how many things can you juggle at the same time and still do a good job at it? Cause like, you don't want to be juggling too much and be dropping the stuff you're juggling all the time. You want to be juggling and doing it fluently and like, it's just running nice. So I think that's when we realized that, hey, we got to get the sales guys to really focus on their sales game and grow and get really good at sales. And it's not really sales. It's more so just helping people and being master communicators that, hey, you know what? We are the best company in the state of Pennsylvania. Like, this is why. And so like that needs to be on point. Like production needs to be on point. The subcontractor crew needs to be on point. And so when you get everyone to like know their place, get inside sales to understand their place and their piece to it, like then you really have something that you could step away for a second and just know that it's still getting done. And I think that's the whole goal is how can we create a really efficient assembly line?
Okay, so what were some of the things that you did or have evolved with the company that get salespeople on point? And then we'll go to production and then the subcontractors.
Yeah.
So for the salespeople, what were some of the things that have been impactful along the way that, like, man, in like they've gone through? I know you train your guys and you're always bringing in or bringing them to trainings or like there's part of that, but it has to be in the execution. How did you guys execute on that?
Well, I think you have to hire people with the right mindset. I know it sounds super simple, but I think that's really it, is just getting people that are like-minded, that can understand your core values, your mission statement. And so when you start to hire from there, I learned it early on, is that we should have core values. That's number one, but you should hire and fire and coach based upon them. So sometimes it just needs to be a coaching opportunity for you guys to have a conversation towards, hey, you're not doing this. We want you to do this. And this is the reasons why. Like, you got to be able to like get people that are bought in and then kind of coach them continuously along the way. But to really answer your question, what was it again? I want to make sure I answer.
Well, it's really that you're right on line with it. And I think I have a follow-up already. It's like, I think early on sometimes is early on we need people, or we think we need people, and we don't have a skill set in hiring. I love that, like we talked about this before, but I'm a big fan of EOS and establishing your core values and measuring your team against core values. Early on, a lot of times we don't have those core values, or they're not as defined as we want them to be. And I think that a lot of times we want a body, right? We want somebody to be doing this, right? Somebody to be doing sales, somebody to be doing production. We need a body in that seat. And we start to overlook their misalignment with our core values. Did you ever make those mistakes early on? And how did you learn, like, to just say, to more quickly determine if it was the right person or not?
Yeah. So I think when you're just starting out, your resources are a little bit more limited, and, timing is everything. So sometimes what you want to do, you don't have the people that you really want to start with. And you have to realize, hey, this is where I need to build from, which helps you become a better leader. It helps you be someone that you can take someone that has a certain skill set and then say, okay, well, I really need them to produce this, but they're not doing it. And it now helps you to self-audit, like, am I being the person that can lead them? That comes down to moral authority. Like, are you living your life in a way that someone wants to listen to? Or are you just being that boss that just because you're an authority, like, you have to do it because, you're the boss? Like, you want people to, like, look at you and listen to you because you have the moral authority to be listened to, if that makes sense. So I think sometimes you got to recognize where people are at and just say, okay, like, this gives me an opportunity to grow as a leader. And then also too is just like, okay, there's levels to things. So as we grow as a company, like, I've been preparing my guys that we've been dialed in through 2025. It's November 25th, but we've been talking about it for about 3 weeks now. So we're already putting ourselves in the framework of 2025. So I'm making sure, hey, everyone's on board for this 2025. And if someone isn't, I want to make sure that how can I get them there? Because not everyone is going to, like, quickly, when you say jump, they're going to jump too. Some people, it's going to take a little bit more time. So that comes down to the leadership side of it, is like, how can I be a good leader to get everyone moving towards 2025? So there's a couple things there I said, but basically it's just like, you got to, like, recognize where you're at as a company, recognize the people that you have, and then realize that you want to grow your people, you want to grow yourself, and then you want to continue to hire. Like, I have a sign on my door in front of the office that says, like, now hiring, ask me. It's been there for like two years when I had the idea of doing it, because we never stop hiring. Like, some people, they'll be like, oh yeah, this person was looking for a job. I'm like, well, tell them to put in an application. Like, we may not need that position right now, but, like, we should always be having conversations. Like, I got a guy that I just was at a funeral. I went to a funeral, and, obviously a super sad circumstance, but you end up catching up with old people that you haven't talked to in a while. So talking to this younger guy, and literally his dad actually was the one that died. But, I was a person of influence. So, like, I had some authority with him where I could talk to him. And he says he was looking for something different. I said, dude, you should just, like, come with me and be a project manager. And do I need a project manager right now? No, but I have enough belief in myself and the company that I'm going to need another project manager. So I said, January 1st rolls around, come on board. I'll train this guy for like a month. I'll get him to go full onboarding. I'll get him to understand what I need him to understand. So when, like, January, February, March rolls around, that's where I'll start to see that profitability. So it's not about, like, how can this guy make me money, like, right now or in 2 weeks? Now, I know there's a lot of great people out there that, like, dude, that's their standard. That's great.
Yeah.
But for me, like, I understand that sometimes you have to, like, pour into people and make a lot more deposits into them before you can take that withdrawal. Like, you just got to, like, always be recruiting, always be looking to hire, always be looking to advance top talent, and growing your people from within. And like I said, being that person that like someone would listen to, because the more and more I realize business, the more and more I realize it's people. The more
It's
people
all
I can
people.
influence, the more people I can gain on my side, the better my company is going to be. And then it comes down to that momentum. If I'm constantly looking to bring the best people on, if I'm looking to put the best roofs on, if I'm looking to have the best relationships in the industry, I'm going to have so much momentum that there's going to be a point where like I'm going to have people that are on my team doing this. And now it's not just dependent upon me, it's dependent upon like an entire team of recruiting and leveling up and growing and getting better and looking at 2025 when it's November. Like you're going to have that belief system that's going to be communicated to the team, and now the team is doing what you want them to do, not because you're their boss, but because you're their leader and someone that they look up to.
I love that, and I think that kind of ties into those phases of business, right? Like, or the stages of your company. In the beginning, you're trying to just figure out how to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
You're figuring out, like you said, how to sell a job, how to build a roof, how to get a dumpster there on, like how to everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are things that you need to figure out. But now, like in what you just said, you're at a place where you are able to forecast into the future. And even if you don't need the person right now, you have faith that you'll need them come 2025, right? And so
I've built up so much momentum that that's what I expect.
Exactly. You've gotten to a place where it's predictable. The outcome is more predictable. Maybe that's a good way to put it, right? And so But man, there's some in between there, right? So in the beginning, you're just figuring things out. I love the next the next phase is you're really finding the right people and understanding your culture and who they are. Is it the same in the production side as it is on the sales side, or are there any differences there?
To be honest with you, I think it's very much the same. I think it's something that doesn't change, because like people are just people. So if you can understand people in sales, you can understand people in production. Now their language and the way that they're going to respond to certain things are going to be different. But again, it's just going back to people, like understanding that like salespeople are motivated by this, and this is what salespeople are attracted to. And then understanding like production has a different way of thinking. Totally cool, because they're different people.
What are the differences? What are the differences
so for instance,
that you find?
Production looks at things like, let's say, like for instance, like compensation, like what's most important to them, like differently than sales. I don't want to get like too involved with it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Salespeople in production are completely different
they're
people, right?
They think differently. They have different goals for themselves. They value themselves differently. Not like one's more important. That's not what I'm saying. But like they just look at life differently, right? So I can't try to attract a production person like I would a salesperson, and vice versa. Not to say, again, that it's not a diss on the person or the position. It's just like you just think
different roles.
Different.
They're different roles, right?
Yeah.
And then so you really what I'm hearing is you're finding what motivates them. You're finding what motivates them and leading them in that direction. Now there's that other aspect to the roofing business, and that's your subcontractors that you mentioned. How do you is there you still have to express your core values. You still have to, I feel like anytime you're hiring subs, you still have to treat them like an employee in a way.
Yeah.
Like there still has to, they're not going to, there's very few subcontracting crews that are just going to solve all your problems, right? Like, I'll just outsource it, right? Like, I'll just outsource my problem, right? They're always going to, there is still a management of it. What have you found that has kept you on point in managing your subcontracting crews?
Yeah, I think the most powerful thing that I learned over the years is understanding that there's, especially in like the Spanish culture, the way that they they're super, super loyal community. They're very loyal to one another. So when I want to come in there and I want to be an encouragement, my buy-in they're a lot more guarded. So I almost have to go to the subcontractor leader and I have to go to him so that he can communicate it. So, and also there's like some barriers that I can't really cross because them being a subcontractor. I can't tell them when to show up. I can't tell, like, there's a lot of things that, like, because they're not an employee, like I'm a little bit limited to what I can and can't say. But I know two things that work really well for me is, like, I know that when I do have something that does arise, I need to go to the leader, and that's the subcontractor leader, and have that conversation with him, because really they're not my guys, they're his guys. Right. The other thing too is, like, I need to make sure as much of the time I'm getting as much, I'm depositing as much as into them as I should say it, like, I got to make sure I'm constantly depositing to them, because when I come to the job site and I check in on them and I just say, hey man, you guys are killing it, you're doing a good job, and like being a source of encouragement, and then be like, hey, can I get you guys lunch today, or can I get you guys waters or something like that, so that, like, that next time when that homeowner comes around and they're like, why does the drip edge look like that, and I'm like, hey guys, you got to take that piece of drip edge off, like, they don't like it, and the subcontractor is like, well, dude, that's what the guy gave me, and like, so now it's like, but I've had enough deposits into that subcontractor crew, and just say, and you know what, they're not going to charge me more. They're just going to say, hey, you know what, like, we love you, Bryson, you're a great guy, like, we'll just fix that piece. They might be a little upset as they're doing it, but they'll still do it for me because I've spent so much time with them. Like, some of my guys have been with me almost 4 years as a subcontractor. And they still have the freedom to work for other people, but they choose not to because they like working with us. They love the stability that we can bring to the place. So yeah, you know what? Maybe there's a day of the week that they are working for another guy, and you know what? Again, there's some laws and restrictions in Pennsylvania where, like, you got to make sure that you don't get in trouble with that, because you don't want to get audited, and then you're looking at some serious workers' comp bills. But so I know how to do as much as I can do and not do too much, because I don't want to screw the system up.
Yeah, but I think the key point is that you're pouring into them in a certain way, right? Like you're making those deposits of goodwill and being encouraging and leading still, right? You're not just people treat subcontractors differently, right? Like and poorly in some cases.
Yeah,
and a lot of times they're used to
crazy stuff. It's crazy.
And a lot of times they're used to that. And if you are someone who is encouraging and is taking care of them and you're doing the right things, like you said, then people want to work for you. And that's in the office, on your sales team or your subs. I think that happens. In kind of along the way, it sounds like a lot of team and culture stuff are on your mind. And that's, in the phases of business, like I think early on, a lot of that is, like we said, like you're just looking for a body. You're not looking for like this person who is a perfect cultural fit. And they're just, like, at what phase or what stage of your business did things open up for you where you were able to go, oh, now I can really focus on this, which is the next level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the next level was when I was able to learn from, like, for instance, Monarch and Riva. So basically how they did things is they just siloed things out. And I think there was a point in time in my business when I couldn't just silo things out. So I had to have like a realistic expectation to say, hey, I only have 2 or 3 guys. To create that system is going to take some time. It's going to take some more momentum, which I don't have yet, but I can create it by creating like just little disciplines of like, hey guys, as we progress and move forward in this direction, we got to start doing it like this. And so it's just little subtle changes. And then eventually in like a year, like it changes. And then you got 2 years and you get 3 years. And eventually we'll hit that 10-year mark, and even the stuff I'm saying today will be so far from what I'm truly dealing with when I'm at 10 years. So I think there's just like a point in time where you recognize where you want to go. Like there's always that like funny thing, like you only ever like earn what your self-worth is, and you only ever like, for instance, there was like that 4-minute mile, right? Everyone was like, dude, nobody could do the 4-minute mile. Nobody could do the 4-minute mile. Well, then like someone hits the 4-minute mile, and then like a couple, like not far after that, another guy hits it, breaks the record. Another guy breaks the record. But when people think that they can never do it, it'll never be done. But as soon as you start to realize, hey, I'm only 1, 2, or 3 guys right now, but I want to build what Monarch built, or I want to build something even greater than what they've built. You got to almost have a crazy belief that you can do it. And as soon as you start to just like say you can, and you start to do the actions that high level people do, then you realize, you know what, I just need to keep on this train. Because it's so funny that there's a lot of guys in the industry that they never reach their full potential, because like they could be like the best roofer, but like sometimes the best roofer doesn't win the job. It's the guy that like can market right. But there's a lot of people that can just market right, but they can't get production down. Like you want to realize you want to build an organization that like you market really well, you sell really well, you have an amazing production team. Like you have people in your company that are, just doing crazy cool stuff. And I think it goes back to the beginning of what I've been saying. It's just momentum. Once you gain that momentum, like you can't be stopped.
Yeah, and that momentum takes time to build. To me, it's like you're pushing up the hill first, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get to the top of the hill, and now it just like you can't stop it, mm-hmm. right? There's a point where you can't. It's like it feels like you can't stop it.
Yeah.
Has that started to happen with you, where you're like, man, like you said, I could go to Costa Rica with my wife and things are completely getting done. Yep. To me, that's where that corner is turned, right? And now it's this momentum that's been built that feels like you can't stop it. Has that happened? And where do you think in a business is that a $5 million? And I know it's simplifying it by just doing it by like gross revenue or something like that. Sure. But like, where along the way are these like milestones that people should like? Is it 0 to 2 million? Is just like figure stuff out, and then
I would say
like 2 to 5, you're starting to figure out like, oh, this is how we're going to silo it, and then we're getting like what's that for you? What is that?
Yeah, it definitely like I think you're being extremely helpful by saying that, because that's exactly it. I think, and again, I'm not a huge massive company, but we have the workings of doing that, and we will do it. But if any experience I can speak from, there are different phases. So like you got a little bit more of the beginning phase where you just kind of do everything yourself. And you know what, that's a great business model if that's what you want. Like go ahead and do it. Like you'll have a lot of freedom and peace of mind, because like, hey, I only want to be this size, and I know I can make this level of income, and I know I have the freedom for this. Great, cool. And then there's like that next silo that actually going backwards would be more comfortable, because sometimes that 2 to 3 million is actually like that sucky spot, because it's like you're not quite there and you're not really as profitable as you could be, because you're trying to have the structure in place to be that big company. And so sometimes like there's those different phases where every time I've grown, I kind of miss the rear view mirror, where I was like, oh man, like that was a little bit easier. I remember when I could have just done this. But sometimes you can't get away with those things anymore. So I think, but then it always gets better. So like if you continue to like move in that positive direction, eventually you'll work yourself out of that little hurdle, and then you'll get to like a new hurdle. And then it's just a continuous progression of like, hey, we're killing it, but you have new problems. So
Yeah.
different levels, there's different levels.
How do you decide which problem to solve next? Because there always is a problem to solve. What do you think about when it's like, okay, we got these 10 things that we could work on. How do you decide which one comes next?
So I'm not sure if this is actually like the right answer, but I know this is what I can look back on and say that is consistent. I think it's always self-development. So self-development with myself and self-development with the team, because when you can continue to grow, like those things just become easier. Like some people have said it before really good, where like when you pray to God for patience, like God will show you patience so that you can become patient. He doesn't just like make you patient. And it's like the same thing where it's like, if you want to reach another level, he's going to place things in your life that are going to make you reach that next level. But you can't reach that next level if you're not prepared to like go through the fire. So, and I think it's always you versus you. It's always like what you believe about yourself, is the next thing that can be done. And so I don't, like I said, I don't know if that's actually right, but I know that it works for me. And like every time I level up, the company levels up. Every time I stay complacent and stay average, the company remains and stays average. But like, I know that I want to impact thousands of lives for the kingdom of God through In the Light Roofing, right? So I know that in order to do that, wow, 1,000 lives, that's a lot of people that I got to touch. Well, I can't just do that if I'm only doing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 million. Like, I know that it comes down to like having a bigger company, because that means I can have more people on my team, that therefore impacts other people like homeowners or subcontractors or whatever, or just people who are out at the gas station. Like when you have a bigger company and you recruit good people, and like that guy that's on your team and your company close represents the company right, well, that's impacting a life, right, in a positive direction. So it's just like a lot of that just being repeated, I think.
No, it's the vision growing. It sounds like too. Your vision keeps growing. You know, from our last call or our last podcast to this one, about 2 years from now, I don't think you had that vision yet before. Like, how did your vision come into play? Like, and like what? I love that you're always about continuous improvement, and I'm sure that's where it came from, right? Like it was like, hey, I read a book or I was at a conference or something said in some like, but where? How did you decide that this is the vision? Because there's another thing that I think, and I'll kind of complicating this a little bit, but I think that the vision in the beginning is to make a living. Like when we talk about the stages again, right? Like the vision in the beginning is to see if you can make, or even like what I think you said it when we were talking earlier, like to see if you can even make a living doing this, right? Like that's like your first thing. And then it becomes something else. And I think that there's definitely a point where it turns to your why becomes your people. From a lot of the contractors that I have interviewed, it turns to their people, but then it turns into the greater community, right? And it sounds like that's how your vision has progressed, and now you have this much deeper why. Like, when did that come about in your stages of business?
At least for me, if I can really like look back and say like when did that come in, I would think ultimately since day one. I think it truly was something that was like put inside of me. I don't think I developed it or grew it. Maybe I got better at it, but I think
better at articulating it. Maybe
yeah. Like I think it was always there, because I think it was something that like I truly believe that like God put me on this earth to literally like have this company and to put roofs on. Like, I love what I do. I have like a weird passion for it. And I don't think that comes from like finding it. I think it's just there. Like, for instance, like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan and hey, you know what? I'm comparing myself to those guys. That's all right. But anyways, those guys didn't they weren't just like one day, like, did you want to be the greatest? They always wanted to be the greatest. They just sometimes they had some different roadblocks along the way that they weren't ready for that. And so there's just some sort of fire or some sort of dog that you have in you that you know what you want and you just want to go out and get it. And sometimes it takes some time. Sometimes it takes a whole lifetime to really truly get there. So yeah, I just think it was placed in me from the beginning that I knew that I had this vision for greatness. And I love God. I love living my life through the lens of that. And I think it was just an easy blend. There's this guy, Ty Lopez, he talks about this where he's you should find what your God-given ability is, something that you don't need to trick yourself to do. For instance, I recognize that I really like to help people, right? So I know that service is in my realm of the strengths, right? It gets even more intricate where you start to look at the way you're built, your design. Well, I recognize that I have a little bit of a stockier build. I'm good for construction. I look like a construction worker. So I should be in construction because it complements me. And so then you start to look at all these things that you're good at and you start to see how they interject. Ty Lopez, he says it way better, but basically that's it. He's if you're 6'5" and you're really good at basketball, don't be like a football player. It's not your God-given thing. So I think it's just a matter of just understanding what you're good at, wanting to hone in on those things, and just live in the place that promotes you to perform at the highest level, and just make sure you're constantly surrounded towards that mission.
How did I think that's a real thing. And you told me earlier when we were chatting, it's find what you love to do plus your vocation and put them together, right? And so does that kind of go along with it?
100%.
Is that, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's because that's how people don't get burnt out. People get burnt out at things because they never really loved it. There's a lot of people that are in the roofing space for a period of time, and then they're like, nah, dude, I don't like that. Because they were never truly passionate about it. They never really loved it. That's why you'll see me in the roofing game for a long time because I love it. I got a passion for it. I know that I can make a very, very nice income, and I know that it promotes me being the best. So,
yeah, it's amazing when you do find the things that you enjoy, right? Or the things that really motivate you and drive you, and when you do find that what you're doing for your vocation aligns with those things in your your kind of your truth or whatever, right? It's different. I think of that in team too, around team, and it's a lot of times we have to find we want to find the right person, right, culturally for our company, but then we have to find the right fit for them. Because you talk about, you're built to be a roofer, even your build and everything like that. But are you built everyone has their certain strengths, and maybe they're better from a sales perspective. Maybe they're better, as a job site supervisor, and their attention to detail is amazing, right? There's also I think there's also finding that those, especially in your team, you found it in yourself. Now, how do you find it in your team?
Yeah. So I think this isn't something that's as easy to find. Sometimes it takes a period of time for someone to work for you for 3 months or 6 months or even an entire year for you to really understand how they're wired And I think that just comes like naturally and organically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think you can force some of that stuff. Like, some of that just needs to take place through time. Like, time is like the best thing. Like, sometimes you bring someone on, you think they're going to perform so well, but they only perform that well for like 3 months or like a month. And that comes down to because like they were just kind of like putting on a front. They weren't really wired that way. So I think once you're able to understand how people are wired and like what motivates them, what's their why, like, what's pushing them to do what they do? Like, is it just making more money, or is it just like enjoying what they do? Like, I have a guy on my team that, like, dude, he is so cool, man. He just like wants to be needed. Like, he wants to be the guy that people go to. So you could literally, and obviously we don't take advantage of him, but you could pay the guy whatever you like, anything. The guy would still work here because he loves to be needed. He loves to be included in things. And that's a beautiful person to have on your team. Like, you want people that like, they have a passion for service. Again, it aligns completely within our core values of like, he fits the bill. Like, he fits why he's on the team, because he's so good at just like being that all-in guy. He's like, whatever you need, I'll go do it. And it's just like, some people could take advantage of the guy, and I'm sure it's happened in his life. But I'm not going to be that guy. I'm going to be the guy that like understands his worth, understands his value that he brings to the table, and I want to recruit more people like him.
Yeah, for sure. And we had talked about this at one time, is like that some of your team members, you might not be able to measure them from an ROI perspective, like from a dollar amount, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to measure a salesperson, right? Like, they generate.
Yeah, if you're looking at big sales organizations or like big companies that are doing, tens of millions of dollars, that's exactly how their business model is. Like, how much can this rep do? How many leads did they run? How many closes did they take place? Like, and I'm not saying that that's bad. Like, you actually need that. You need to have some intelligence on to see who's performing. But sometimes there's a different metric that takes place, and it's not done by like, you ran this many appointments, you closed this many jobs, you made this much money, and that's why you're still on the team. Sometimes it's like there's something more that's within you, and I need to make sure by the time something happens, like, I need to make sure that we tap into that, because I know that that's what's going to get us to the next level.
So is that something that you're consciously doing, do you think, or subconsciously doing with your team? Like,
I think it's both.
Man, yeah,
I think it's both. I think it's something that like you need to be conscious of, but I think it's also one of those things that it just kind of naturally takes place. Because again, I think the best thing that like to create really good culture and a really good environment, it needs to naturally take place. So I think it just, sometimes you do it subconsciously and then you do it consciously. Like, there's different frequencies I think you tap into. So like, sometimes you are being super intentional, and then other times I'm like, I'm not trying to be something, I'm just being me. And that actually is promoting what I'm trying to do like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Now, you guys are really a roofing company.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you would consider yourselves a roofing company.
100%.
Like, you're not a sales and marketing organization that sells roofs. You're a roofing company.
Yep.
And explain the differentiation in your mind there. Yeah.
So when we have someone from our production team to the install team, to even the guy that answers the phone, right? Like, all of us truly understand, some more than others, but like, all of us truly understand roofing, and we understand that like, hey, like, in order to help people and fix people's problems, we can't just like quote people roof replacements left and right, because like, there's a lot of companies, and again, not talking smack, but they only do replacements. Well, like, you're not really there to help people as much as you say you are if you only offer replacements. Like, if you truly want to help people and you truly are a roofing company, you have to do repairs. Like, you can't just only ever give people the replacement option. And I get it. Like, dude, that's just not us. We're not doing that. We'll help you if it's a $500 repair. all the way up to like a $50,000 roof replacement. Because again, our aim, our goal, our core values is teamwork and stewardship. So like we want to steward that relationship, even if that's not like the most profitable thing. It's the right thing to do, because we know in order to create momentum, in order to move in a positive direction, you just continuously make the right choices. And then it's just easier and easier to like perform at a higher level.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. In having that in mind, like you're looking at, and I'm thinking about like the siloing and all the things you've done along the way. And as you progressed, like when you guys have a warehouse, you've had a warehouse for a few years. So you have a shop, you have a warehouse, an office, warehouse. What stage of business did that come into play?
Yeah. So we've been in business for about, 7.5 years or whatever. So when we jumped into, it actually started at our previous building too. Because like I said, I really come from roofing. I really am a roofer that kind of just realized there was more potential for me in a different position. So yeah, I think it was something that I always like enjoyed. I always loved I just always really loved construction. So I always knew that like a part of the business is the material. So I think I understood that very early on. And then I realized that there's like, it's not just stocking the material. It's actually understanding how much volume of a material you're going to move through to make sure that it makes sense for you buying all that. Because like earlier on, I would buy like, $80K off a rip and just be like, oh, I'm going to buy 3 rolls of this and 4 rolls of that. And it's like, dude, it took me like a year to go through it. Like I could have just had my money in the bank or used that more in marketing. Like, so that was something that I learned, was that there needs to be some there needs to be some thought that's taken into purchasing this. It's not to buy, 50 ultimate pipe boots at Inch and Headquarters when I only know that I'm only going to go through that in an entire year. I don't need to spend a whole year stocking it. It makes the most sense to say, okay, I need X amount for this month. And so I think that's where it took place. It started off just knowing that as a contractor, you need these products to do the job. And then it forms into other things. And I think you just learn more stuff along the way that help.
So I think it's a great thing. Like it's not something that a lot of contractors do, right? They just rely on their suppliers to have stuff in stock when they need it. And that's just how they do business. What has building this inventory management muscle and warehouse and how does that help your business on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, it gives us an edge. So like now when we get to talk to that customer that they are considering another contractor, and now you can mention that within your presentation. Hey, did you know that like if you ever came by our house or our office, and that deposit that you gave us, if you ever wanted to make sure that like we had it all, just come check us out, because like we got bays where like jobs that are going into production are now being like, okay, like that's the material for that job. And so like, it's just like that. I think it's just like another thing that just helps us be different, because you're always looking for those differentiators. Like there's a lot of guys in our area, and they're just smaller. There's a lot of just smaller guys. And then there's like the big guys that are big salespeople. Like in my mindset, there's like no one like us. Like we're one of one in our market. Like there's no one else that is doing the level of stuff that we're doing in the roofing space. Cause like we just solely focus on roofing. We do a little bit of gutters, but a lot of that just promotes the roofing. So it makes sense to be in the roofing space. But like, no, a lot of people, they get distracted because they're doing a lot of different things. But like if you spend all of your energy on one thing, you'll be the real true master of it. And that like, dude, I don't come in this game to be like kind of second best or, I'm kind of good at this and I'm kind of good at that. Like, I don't know. I'm too competitive. I remember when I was wrestling and I'd get second place and I'm like, dude, that freaking fired me up. That got me so mad. Be like,
That's
dude,
right.
like you got second. I'm like, dude, yeah, but I didn't come to get second. I came to get first. Like, so I don't know. It's just like one of those things that like, if I'm going to get first and I'm going to be the best roofer in the state of Pennsylvania, like, dude, I got to have a warehouse because I'm not looking to be like kind of good. Like I'm good to be, I want to be the best. I want to dominate the market. So that's why I have like, different subcontractor crews, and that's why I have production teams, and that's why we can do 2 roofs a day, and that's why like I have 3 equipters, because like we're turning and burning jobs, and like you can't do that if you don't have the resources to do that and if you can, like my whole thing is like, how can I save my guys time, and how can I save myself time? Like that's the difference. That's like the gap that's generally separated from people that are good and great, is like they understand their time. Like some people would be like, hey, I want to save this, so therefore I'll do it myself. Where I'm like my wife she's so funny, man. She's like, all you do is just tell people what to do all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not really that's not like my aim. It's just so I don't do anything. But it's like, if I have that person doing that thing, then I don't have to do it. And therefore I can think about something else. And then if I'm not thinking about that thing, then I'm thinking about the next thing. And it's just like, I understand that the time is the most important thing, and it's not money. So if I can create an environment that promotes the saving time, well, like I wouldn't have stewardship as my core value if I didn't live, breathe, and sleep it. Like I mean that from saving the half a roll of paper to stocking it in the warehouse to having like a dumpster on site, so that like I can walk and talk what I'm saying, and not just, I don't know, I'm getting a little excited.
No, but that's like it to me, like back to your wrestling days and things like that. It's efficiency of movement, right? Like there's an efficiency, like all of the best athletes have like this efficiency in movement. They're not doing the most all the time. They're doing the things at the right time. They're doing everything at the right time. And, of course, in an individual sport like wrestling, you're not relying on your teammates to a point, right? You are relying on your coaches and things like that. But it's that efficiency of movement, the efficiency of which you do things at. And that's what makes me think of like what you're talking about. Like, if I'm going to be the best, I need to be the most efficient. I want to have the most like, and that it maybe I'm wrong, but that's where that's kind of how I heard it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think that like you're probably just looking at it better than I am. I think that's 100%.
I'm good at summarizing things, Bryson. Like that's what I have a skill set. I was on stage at a marketing event recently, and a good friend of mine who's also in the marketing space he had this really long, complicated answer, and I was like, let me summarize that for everyone.
So basically,
right? This is what you meant, right? And he's like, yeah. Well, let's summarize this.
Sure.
Like, let's summarize moving through the stages of business, how you thought about it, and how you think now looking back and looking into the future, like those lessons that you learned, the things that were most impactful. Let's summarize that for everyone.
Yeah. Man, that's a tough one. Yeah, but I guess to summarize it, are you looking like for in like a few sentences or more like in a word?
Yeah, however you want to do it, man. If it takes you 10 minutes to summarize it in 10 minutes. Just to kind of close this out and put this together as a concise thing for people. Like if you were looking back at the path that you've gone down and looking at the road forward ahead of you, like you've done a lot of things. There's different stages of business that you've gone through. Some of the most like what makes you get through those stages? What gets you through those stages, and what can people do?
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned earlier on, is that you should find what you're already good at. Like for instance, this is something I learned too, is like, for instance, we take a DISC assessment, and it tells you all the areas that you're really good at, some areas of growth, and then what is it like to work alongside of a person when you have this DISC assessment. So I think what it is understanding what are your natural born God-given gifts, right? Okay, am I putting myself in a position that's going to like promote the betterment of that? Or am I working against the grain? And sometimes I think it's okay to work against the grain because like there's a lot of things that I was not born with. Like, I don't think I was naturally born a really good leader. I think I was actually like born very introverted. I was like, kind of like anytime there was confrontation, I didn't know how to handle it. Well, both of those things like isn't what like a real leader does. So I had to develop that now that I'm in this leadership position of the company, of being the CEO, like being the owner, like, well, I got to get really good at like standing up for myself or standing up for the betterment of the business or doing the right thing even when it's hard. So that wasn't actually a God-given thing, but I knew that construction was my good thing. So like in order to protect that like the good thing that I had, which was the company, I needed to realize that I needed to develop in the area of leadership and people. So therefore I went against what I was naturally good at and went in a different direction because I knew that that was a necessary requirement towards growing the company. So I think I noticed that. I pivoted from that. I went on this journey. I'm still on this journey. And now it's like, okay, how can I make sure that like the best people are on my team, and all that kind of stuff. So I think to wrap it up in a nutshell is like, do what you're good at. Like if you're really good at doing code, like just do really good at doing code. Or like if you're really good at like SEO and marketing and all that stuff, like some people, they're really good at it, but they're not performing where they want to go. So then they get like, they start looking at something else, be like, oh man, I should just be a roofer. Instead of like being the guy that manages the ads, I should just be a roofer because like I understand marketing, but that's a totally different thing. Like if you just focused on the one thing that you are good at and just became amazing at it, I think you just do so much better. So I guess to wrap it up in a nutshell is really just focus on what you're good at, know the areas that you're not good at, and then just like develop those skills or add people on your team that can do that.
Awesome, man. This has been another episode of the Roofing Success Podcast. Thank you for tuning into the Roofing Success Podcast. For more valuable content, visit roofingsuccesspodcast.com. While there, check out our sponsors for exclusive offers, shop for merchandise, and sign up for our newsletter for industry updates and tips. Also, join the Roofing Success Facebook group to connect with other professionals and stay updated on the latest trends. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, like, share, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue to bring you top industry insights. The website link is in the description. Thanks for listening.